The week ahead starts now.
Latest information coming through again, tensions rising this from the incident, a shooting incident that happened in Soweto. To date, 15 people have died. Again, is monitoring and we'll continue to get the latest as it unfolds. Let's take a look at what we can expect. Thank you very much for tuning in. Of course, this is now the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. We'll take a look at what are some of the stories we can expect on this front. Let's take a listen in for now.
The families who have lost breadwinners, who have space of hours. So, Bahlali, into esicelayo right now, obviously, we have to engage with other law enforcement agencies, and rumor has it that the Minister of Police will be joining us tomorrow in a public meeting whereby he'll be addressing some of the core issues from members of the community. We appeal to members of the community to descend into the arena tomorrow. We are still not definite in terms of the timelines, but we will by end of day today to confirm ukuthi uMinister uBhekicele uzofika sikhatsini. Abahlali baphuma uzozala eNomzamo. Abahlali baphume bazokhipha izikhalazo zabo ngokuhlala kwabahlali eNomzamo. So it's very important tomorrow. We will give our timelines before end of the day because in Nomzamo in a block leadership. Nomzamo does have a block leadership which we will communicate the message through, and even other leaders of society are invited into this meeting so that we can debate better with the minister and tell him the challenges on the ground. But further than that, thanks very much for the efforts from all.
Should we stay with the images?
Came in numbers from different areas, different formations that came to support the situation. Thank you very much. For now, let us focus on trying to see how we can assist the families, because you know when there's death in the family, you know there are finances that have to be supported to the bereaved families. So that is our core focus. Other differences we will see with them as time goes on. But right now we need to check with the others again who are still fighting for their lives in hospital. Sure. Because there are still people who have been shot who are still fighting for their lives in hospital. We need to keep them in our prayers. Sure. So that at least some of their lives are sustained. Yeah. But other differences at the core moment, they do not matter. We need to focus on the core issue to support the bereaved families. Thank you very much, leaders.
Thank you. Commander, morning. Hello.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, well, as you heard there, these are some of the community members. That was the local councillor who was actually speaking, saying that, you know, there shouldn't be any differences, you know. Well, there's Sinao, who's actually here. He's arrived also. We're going to try and get his reaction to what the tensions that actually transpired here, to hear what he definitely has to say. A large crowd of people actually following him, some pushing and shoving happening, but we'll definitely get his reaction to what actually transpired here.
We're still busy with the crime scene. This is a crime scene. Please, just respect the crime scene.
He had 2 gunshots. Then apparently there was a taxi that was parking here. Then when she returned back after the police,
just stay that side of the police line, please.
We're running through.
Sinao has arrived. We're going to try and get a comment from him after what transpired here earlier, where there was tensions between members of the EFF and those of Operation Dudula. They are currently still briefing him. Then probably once he's done, he's definitely going to speak to the media. He had indicated that he had wanted to speak to the media, and we were aware that he's actually making his way here. And from what transpired from the briefing of the local councillor, we heard that apparently Police Minister Bhekicele will be making his way to this particular area tomorrow to try and engage with the community about issues that they've raised about criminality in this particular area. So let's hear what the EFF has to say.
We had the breaking news this told us that there was a mass shooting here in Nomzamo settlement where people were shot indiscriminately in the tavern by a white quantum that parked outside there. So we are here to assess the situation and of course get a briefing from our members who are here, who are also trying to make sure or trace whether there's any EFF members who were harmed in the incident. But I think what the EFF wants to put across most categorically is this must be categorized as a terrorist attack. And we have said that earlier, because there's no motive that can rationalize people being killed, innocent people being shot at indiscriminately with rifles. So it must be categorized as a terrorist attack, and those people must be treated, the perpetrators must be treated as terrorists. And it's a sad day for our nation. We know that in Pietermaritzburg, 4 people have also been shot in a tavern, and this follows a culture of mass shootings in the Western Cape as well. So we are here to assess that situation, and we're also here to say to the people of South Africa that the tears of Bheki he's preparing a hat now, wherever he is, to come here and cry, because his character is one of coming after the fact, to come and speak here, because the police services have failed to deter crime. And it's gotten so out of hand that it has graduated from being petty crimes and has now become organized acts of terror. And that is what we're dealing with. And Mr. Bheki tears, he's going to come here, they're not going to be meaning anything, because he's embroiled and compromised and busy with tender corruption within the South African police services, and is unable to fight crime. And that's why massacres like this can happen.
Now, people have died here, 15 people at that, and there are still others fighting for their lives in hospital. Is this the right time to be gathering here and having the standoff with the other lobby group?
I'm not sure why you would think we're here to have any standoff. That's not our purpose here. If anyone is here for the purpose of a standoff, they are not with the EFF. We're here to assess the situation. We're an organization that is rooted in communities, rooted as a grassroots organization, and we're here to respond to the terror that has been rained on our people. We're going to try and track down each and every family, try and respond and provide comfort to them, send our condolences. So anyone who's here in the interest of a standoff or apportioning blame is not part and parcel of what we're trying to achieve as an organization. Our role here is to send our condolences. And we've seen some stupid media reports, because you guys seem to like to give platform to populists who have no scientific appreciation of the social conditions in South Africa. This massacre happened because there's crime. There's a problem of crime in South African society. There's mass shootings that happen in Cape Town each and every weekend. There's a mass shooting in Pietermaritzburg. There's a mass shooting here. There's a shooting in Katlehong. Are we going to blame all of that on foreign nationals? It's stupid, it's unscientific, and we are not here to participate in any back and forth in that regard. We are here to send our condolences as a loving movement, as an organization of the people, and that is what we're going to do, and that is our primary focus.
And just your reaction to the standoff that was there. I mean, we saw weapons being pulled out and the likes. What is your reaction and your message maybe to members that were implicated in that particular scuffle that unfolded just before our eyes here at Nomzamo?
Look, we're not here for that. If there's agent provocateurs who are going to try and rise through their populist rhetoric, which is unscientifically based, that is not our responsibility to respond to. That's not what we're here for. So they can shout and scream and say whatever they want to do. It is the EFF that carries a popular mandate of our people. It is the EFF that has 1.8 million voters who have tasked us with responding to the social problems of South African society. So people without a constituency, people who are seeking popularity at the expense of other African people, people who are saying that informal settlements which are constituted by majority South African people must be removed, are foolish, because they are opposed to the land expropriation agenda. They don't have an appreciation that our people don't have adequate settlement, they don't have adequate land. And they're trying to push an agenda of evicting our people from the lands which they occupy now. That is not the crisis in South Africa. The crisis in South Africa is a failed government, and any attempt to dodge or shy away from apportioning responsibility to this government which is failing to fight crime is a bought agenda that must be rejected with the contempt it deserves.
And your message to the grieving families that have lost 15 members?
We send our deepest condolences. We're pained by this. It hurts us, that 15 people, and this must be categorized as a massacre. It's nothing but that. It's a massacre, it's a terror attack, and we don't have any faith that the South African Police Services has the capacity to deal with this, because it started in the Western Cape and it's been an ongoing war to the point where the army has been deployed, redeployed, removed and redeployed. And it is now spreading across South Africa because criminals have realized that they are dealing with a cowardice government, and they can do anything with contempt, and there will be no response, there will be no proper investigation and arrest. So criminals are appreciating the fact that they are dealing with a cowardly and weak government, and they are taking advantage of that. And so we are sending our condolences to the families, and we hope that they'll be able to heal.
Yes. And your reaction to calls by the community that the president should deploy the army, as the police are apparently not able to tackle some of the criminal elements who are using high caliber weapons on residents?
Look, we must be cautious of the deployment of the army. We can appreciate the frustrations of the community, but we need a properly adequate South African police services. We need properly educated South African police services that is going to be able to respond to crime. And the army has a tendency of escalating situations and attacking people, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what we're saying. We're saying let's be cautious before that, and we can't trust any intervention from the South African president in terms of this, because he has failed on all metrics since his term began.
Thank you very much. Well, as you heard, that's the EFF national spokesperson, Sinao Tambo, actually saying that, we should be cautious, especially in the call for the army to come here, saying that, they sometimes exacerbate matters by being too violent, especially when dealing with elements. Sinao was that, incidents that happened where there was tensions out here between the EFF and members of Dudula is as a result of agents provocateurs, for lack of a better word, as he put it that way, saying that, some people are actually for grandstanding, they are not for them. They are just here to send messages of condolences to the grieving families, and also to assess the situation on the ground, saying that as the EFF, they are an organization that's grounded on community work, and saying that, they are not here to actually campaign, as was the assertion earlier of members of Dudula, saying that, these guys are here to campaign, they are here to grandstand during a time of tragedy when communities are actually mourning. He was actually also saying that, the assertion that all our problems can be cited to undocumented foreign nationals is unscientific, and it's something that would have to be proven. But at this present moment, we are saying that it can't be proven, it's unscientific, and people that are basing their assertion that informal settlements should be removed and that foreign nationals should actually be deported home are those that are actually emotional, but not basing their assertions on science. Griselda.
For Fence said is Liesel, thank you for that update. The death toll from the shooting incident at the Mdlalose Tavern at Nomzamo informal settlement in Soweto has now risen to 15 people. The incident occurred just after midnight last night. Again, police say culprits used high-caliber firearms and randomly shot patrons at the tavern. It's not yet clear what the motive for the crime is as of yet. But again, SABC News reporter Fence Setimo again at the scene in Soweto, giving us the latest there. Also just hearing from Sinao Tambo, the EFF national spokesperson. Again, a developing story we'll continue to monitor here on the SABC. For now, though, we take a look at other news that's making headlines at this hour. In a separate incident, 4 people were shot dead at a tavern in Sweetwaters, Pietermaritzburg. Another 8 people who sustained injuries are still in hospital. Perhaps for more on this story, let's cross to SABC News reporter Vusi Kumalo. Good afternoon, Vusi. Thank you for joining us. Can you perhaps just bring us up to speed with the latest developments occurring on your end?
Yes, police are saying that no one has been arrested as yet, but they are pursuing 2 gunmen who shot and killed 4 people, 2 of them instantly, and 8 of them sustained serious injuries and are currently battling for their lives at a local hospital here. We are just a kilometer away from where the incident took place. We are now at Kwangamalala village. That's an area that's at Sweetwaters from Samigel Siwe restaurant and tavern, where 4 people died as a result of the shooting that took place there. So we are at the home of one of the deceased, 4 of the deceased. One of those deceased was Nkosi Nati Mdladla, who was basically staying here at this homestead. As I'm moving out of the shot, Nomhle Ngubane showing you there are some people who are here. We just before we arrived, we were told that the local authorities, including the councillor, were here just to pay their condolences to the family and also promising them that police are also doing their best in order to apprehend the suspects. And also Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, he did release a statement saying that as police, they will be deploying maximum resources in order to ensure that they bring to book those responsible for the killings and also injuring 8 people here. Well, the local community is still in fear. They are very fearful of their lives because no one has been arrested as yet, and because they are saying that this is not the first incident of this nature that took place here. They are saying that just recently at a nearby village called Ikwatambuza, there was that suspicious vehicle that usually drives around here and shooting people. And they are saying that those who were lucky enough to see this vehicle, even though it was very dark, it was 8:30 last night, they were saying that it could have been the very same vehicle. Let us talk to one of the persons who may have witnessed this incident, Mr. Mfanafuthi Dlamini, who is the brother of the deceased Mdladla. Baba, kafushane nje ukuthi ngomunye wabantu engathi mhlawumbe kade bekhona kwenzeka isigameko. Awusitshele ngokubonile nokuzwile.
Mina ngikubonile njengomuntu akade ekhona lapho kwenzeke khona isigameko. Bese ijabulela kumnandi kwase ngena abantu aqhumisa isibhamu kangazi ukuthi kwenzakalani thina sasingena phansi kwamatafula. Umfowethu lo ushonile yena ubengala kudanswa ngakhona la kade kwenzeka khona yonke lento ebiyenzeka kwase nayithinteka kabuhlungu.
Mhlambe ngathi ukudubula kuthathe isikhathi esingakanani?
Mhlambe thathe isikhathi esingango 10 minutes ka 15 minutes ngoba isona impela besilokhalile nje impela ngoba ningi abantu abathintekile nabashonile.
Bekubhekiswe abantu abathile noma umuntu bedubula nje eqondise noma kubani obedansa?
Mina mengibheka ngathi ukuthi mhlambe khona abantu mhlambe kade eze kubona mhlambe basebezama mhlambe abanye ukuthi bamvimbe kwase seyidubula kwasani ukuze naye athole indlela yokuthi akwazi ukubaleka. Because angazi nama ngibonanga kahle ngoba la bengihleli khona bengingabonakala kahle bengizwa nje kuqhuma isibhamu.
Uma nizwa mhlambe ngiyazi amaphoyisa akabophi umuntu futhi ashuthi izathu ngokwa amaphoyisa akazilutho, kodwa nina ngokwazi kwenu nje futhi umfowenu lwebeni naye, isiphi mhlawumbe izathu ngokuzwa kwenu esiholele ekutheni kuze kudutshulwe abantu ngalolu hlobo?
Mina ngisazi ngempela isizathu singenza ukuthi sidutshule abantu kangaka bengenzile lutho bethi bozijabulela nje kuphela ngoba baxabananga nabo bebejabulela nje kumnandi kwase ngena abantu nje sithubeni badane bavulela nje ngenhlamvu nje bavulela ngenhlamvu kwashona abantu kwalimala abantu.
Wena usinde kanjani?
Mina njengoba ngisho nje ukuthi indawo ebengikuyona ibisekucasheleni la bengafikanga khona ngakwazi ukuthi ngingene ngaphansi kwetafula nabanye abafowethu kade sinabo sacasha khona sasaphuma sesithula isibhamu ukuthi sikwazi nathi ukubaleka.
Mhlawumbe ungathi nje Mfanafuthi Mdladla uyena oshonile ubhuti wakhe ube umuntu onjani inkosi nathi Mdladlebe ube umuntu obenjani nje emndenini ube umuntu onjani nje kakhulukazi nasemphakathini nakuba ke niphumile nayo ijabulise ebusuku?
Inkosi nathi ube umuntu alright kona wonke umuntu ephilela wonke umuntu ejabula njenganami nje kumfa bengangithathi njengomfabo omncane bengithatha njengomuntu olingana naye ethi hayi bafa ukuthi right ukuthi wrong yabo nje sijabula kamnje bekwazi nona ukuthi ahambe nami sendaweni zokuzijabulisa ube umuntu ophilayo nje impela nje ukwazi ukuhleka nabo bonke abantu.
Ukuphepha kwendawo siyathola ukuthi bekhona namaphoyisa le ndawo iba namaphoyisa kuphephe kangakanani lapha?
Yabo ngazi nami ukuthi kwenzeke ngoba bakhona impela abantu abagadayo khona ukuthi laba bantu bangene kanjani angazi impela nami kungithusile nje wethane nje kwayisidumdumu nje ukuthi how come ukuthi uzongena abantu nebhamu ngaphakathi angazi ukuthi kwenzekeni.
Okay, siyabonga. That's the brother of the deceased. The deceased name is Nkosinathi Mdladla, who apparently died during the incident that took place at about 8:30 last night here in Sweetwaters. We are now at Kwanxamalala village, which is about a kilometer away from where the incident took place. Well, his brother here is saying that his brother was a very kind-hearted person. He was a kind of a jovial kind of a person. He's saying that he will be sorely missed because he was a caring person. He loved his family. He's also saying that when the incident took place, the perpetrators then shot indiscriminately at a dancing crowd. So his brother was not with those people who were dancing at just a distance from him, and then they were able to run for their dear lives. Some of them went under the table, so that's why they survived. But the shooting took place for about 10 to 15 minutes. So he's saying that, estimating that the firing of the shot lasted for about 10 to 15 minutes. So that's what we got here at the moment. No one has been arrested, but police are saying that they are pursuing this matter.
Vusi Khumalo, thank you very much for that update. Again, Vusi Khumalo, reporter live from the Tavern in Sweetwater. Peter Maritzburg, perhaps also 1 kilometer from the incident in a village where one of the victims, who was obviously shot in Nkosinati Mdladla. We just spoke to his brother there, again, just giving us the latest on what has transpired within the area. Also a developing story we're monitoring, again, at the SAWA SABC. We'll bring you the latest as it unfolds. On to other news now. The South African Communist Party, the SACP, will be hosting its 15th National Congress between the 13th and 16th of July 2022. It's under the theme Together. Let's build a powerful socialist movement of the workers and poor. Now, we are also, amongst many other issues, going to be exploring what the draft iteration of the party program, which is entitled The South African Struggle for Socialism, entails. Perhaps we also understand part one of that was released back in April. The Congress will, amongst other Central Committee reports, also discuss the political report and the state of the organization report at large, covering experiences of the SACP over the past few years, as well as tackling some of the questions related to its alliances and, other aspects on that front. But perhaps for more on this, we are going to be joined by the Sali Mapaila. He's the first Deputy Secretary of the SACP. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon and good afternoon to our viewers.
All right, Mr. Mapaila, let me start off by perhaps also just firstly thanking you for your time here today. But I think before we get into the program of action for the Congress set to take place this week, I want to look at a few domestic, continental and international dynamics that are unfolding. Let's start off in Angola. José Eduardo dos Santos and his legacy as a leader, perhaps having ruled for about 38 years, obviously having passed on Friday, we understand his mixed legacy, dubbed as an architect of peace, stabilizing his country. But we've also seen, him being blamed for the state that Angola plunged into to date. Walk us through what that legacy as a man looks like from your standpoint.
I think President dos Santos of Angola did very well. Firstly, let's express our sincerest condolences to his family and to his comrades and to the Angolan people, the people that have hosted our movement during the dark days of apartheid and fought the apartheid regime in its territory and inflicted major defeat to the apartheid enemy, which allowed us to have a transformation towards democracy in South Africa. So President dos Santos leaves a shining legacy of liberation, of defending his country. Of course, many people will want to talk about how long he stayed in office and perhaps many other things that wrongly happened later. But the most important one was that together with Agostinho Neto and the MPLA movement, they managed to defeat the Portuguese as well as the South African the apartheid regime and to free their people. So he leaves a for the continent, that we can learn how to peace in Angola, and there's the strategic fights that he led in defense of their revolution.
Mr. Mapaila, we seem to be having some technical issues. It seems to have been corrected. I'm going to continue with the conversation. If there are any other glitches, then perhaps we'll just take a quick ad break. Okay, let's take a quick ad break. We will continue with this conversation on the other side. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Right, Right, welcome back. The week ahead continues with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's go back to our story just before the ad break. The South African Communist Party will be hosting the 15th National Congress between the 13th and the 16th of July 2022 under the theme Together. Let's build a powerful socialist movement of the workers and poor. Perhaps for this and more, we are joined by the First Deputy Secretary of the SACP, Mr. Sali Mapaile. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to try a telephonic conversation this time. It seems load shedding is affecting us on all fronts. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Mr. Mapaile, if you can hear me, we were in conversation about the legacy of...
Yes, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, loud and clear. Great. So we were in conversation about the legacy, the mixed legacy, obviously in relation to the passing of José Eduardo dos Santos. And you were just reiterating what that legacy looks like, perhaps also his influence in stabilizing his own country, but also playing a pivotal role in South Africa as well as the rest of the continent.
Yes, like I said, I think to express our condolences to the people of Angola and President Dos Santos' family. The legacy that he leaves behind, it's one to be proud of, particularly we as South Africans, because I think Angola, perhaps more than many other countries on the continent, played such a critical role in the fight against the apartheid regime. Its major battlefields were in Angola, and that their defeat became so strategic that South Africa and Namibia were able to see independence. So, and he stood very strong in that space, despite the conditions that his people were facing, and he never forgo solidarity with the liberation movement of South Africa and Namibia, and continued to play a critical role in the frontline states. But I think we can pay tribute to him for this outstanding contribution to the African continent and to its liberation.
All right. Thank you very much for those sentiments and for passing on those condolences. And I think just before the conversation started, before the ad break, I spoke about how before we get into the conference, I wanted to look at some of the domestic and continental as well as global issues affecting, the world over. And honing into another story that obviously has been making headlines is the issues that are transpiring in Sri Lanka. I wonder, what does it say about leaders who perhaps turn a deaf ear when their nations are in a crisis and the cries at home are not being heard? I'm asking this because I want to bring in a few examples. We've seen countries with economic crisis leading to social upheavals. We can see in South Africa, obviously the issue of electricity compounded by crimes. Most recently, we've just spoken to our reporters based in Pietermaritzburg and Soweto. Our very own police minister embroiled in allegations of corruption pertaining to a mobile phone contract, but also his response just last week to civilians at an open meeting address. I wonder what your comments are in terms of what you're observing from those leaders.
Well, firstly, that all leaders must be humble and listen to the people. And that existing economic systems, particularly the capitalist system, has dismally failed the world and creating huge social upheavals because people now cannot afford basic necessities like food, medicine, health services, transport. All the basic needs are getting more and more difficult for people to afford worldwide. And we've seen the reincarnation of capitalist domination of the world that has now brought several wars, and these wars, including this special military operation of Russia in Ukraine, are creating more and more problems for the world. And the people who have created these wars are cushioning themselves, the same as what was happening with the Sri Lankan president, where the economy is collapsing right in their hands, and they still remain addicted to a system that cannot respond to the needs of the people. The same as in this country, where we have one of the biggest economies on the African continent, and yet the highest rate of poverty and unemployment, and also inequalities, which our inequalities even regarded as the highest in the world between those who earn more and those who earn less earn nothing at all. So it is this ability of leaders to embrace other ideas, to become heterodox in economic thinking, not just implement one similar medicine that is injected on society, even if it fails. like our capitalist system here in South Africa. It's a real crisis of the fate of the capitalist system in this country in many respects. And I think that there are alternatives. We have put those alternatives on the table on every other aspect of our economic crisis, and we're also debating this in our coming Congress.
Right, so let's then look at the SACP. Perhaps you're speaking about ideology and also social contract theories amongst other issues. That's obviously now come to the fore. Perhaps what alternatives are on the cards. And considering the SACP, perhaps its juncture and how this conference is rather a watershed congress. Perhaps being held just a year after the party has been celebrated a centenary. How monumental is this? Is this event going forward ahead of this Congress?
Yeah, I think it's such a critical moment for us to have this Congress. Firstly, after having celebrated our 100 years of commitment and selfless struggle to the liberation of our people, people's power, as well as to socialism, our country is now facing serious problems, of course, including the global community. And therefore, an assessment of the last 5 years and how to map up the program for the next 5 years becomes critical and to be relevant to the basic needs of the people. Firstly, how to respond to the economic crisis that is in our people, how to develop public economy that can benefit the people, not only the elite and the few who operate only in the capital. And I think it's also important to appreciate the fact that there has been a lot of attack on ideologies, but the biggest failure of ideology is the capitalist ideology in the world today. And we need, in our case...
Right. Let's see if we can get Sally Mapaila back on the line, First Deputy Secretary of the SACP, again in conversation ahead of the 15th SACP Congress that's set to take place between the 13th and 16th of July, honing in on a few domestic issues, continental issues, and perhaps globally. We obviously lost him there on the line. We're going to try and get him back to continue that conversation. Let's take a quick ad break and continue on the other side. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. We'll continue to monitor some of the stories, including that 15th Congress set to take place by the SACP. Again, we were in conversation with the First Deputy Secretary, Sally Mapaila, again suffering from load shedding issues. So as soon as we get that connection restored, we'll continue with that conversation. But for now, let's take a look at international stories that will be making headlines this week. For that, we're joined by Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International Editor. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the week ahead.
Good afternoon, Lizel.
Let's jump straight into it. We've just spoken to Sally Mapaila, and obviously he was echoing the mixed legacy that came from Jose Eduardo dos Santos. And I wonder, as we look at the funeral preparations, perhaps also the repatriation processes that should be underway, what can we expect on that front?
It is not clear yet when will his body be repatriated to Angola. You know that the family has pointed out that they want more investigations in terms of the cause of the death. And they have kind of given an indication that perhaps they don't trust the reports that it is due to the challenges of health that he had previously. And therefore, it is still not clear when will his body be taken to Angola. You know that his son is currently in prison for fraud, corruption, and money laundering cases. And also the daughter is also facing similar challenges in Angola. And for the family that is currently in Spain or around the world to travel back to Angola, I think it is going to be a challenge.
Well, we'll continue to monitor and see what develops and unfolds on that front. Let's move to Japan. We've also seen a lot of activity there. I mean, voting in Japan is underway for the parliamentary election. And as we look at the dynamics unfolding there, can you walk us through how the assassination of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has impacted the dynamics that are unfolding there?
Well, I think many people are still in a shock in terms of what transpired in Japan. You know that around the world, these kind of incidents are very, very scared. And therefore, people are really asking questions in terms of the security of sitting heads of state and government and the former heads of state and government. And I think around the world, this is what many countries are looking at. But I think in terms of the preparations, we know that on Monday there's going to be a memorial service. His body is already in Tokyo. And also on Tuesday, his funeral is expected to take place on Tuesday, and I think many leaders will travel to Tokyo, those who are very close to him, but also some will send their messages. You know that Japan is one of the major countries in terms of automobile industry and also the ICT sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be monitoring that, and perhaps as the funeral for the former Prime Minister gets underway, we're also seeing the funeral of José Eduardo dos Santos. Will President Cyril Ramaphosa be attending? What can we surmise on that front?
I think these are former leaders. With the challenges we are facing in the country right now, the issue of electricity and the issue of economic challenges, I mean, the whole country up in arms in terms of how they are squeezed and how they are struggling to survive. And also now the recent incidents of shootings. You know that in the Western Cape you have this problem. It is quite rife. You did experience a similar number of people dying at the Tavern in the Eastern Cape. Even now, we don't know the reasons or the cause of that incident. And now you have this one in Soweto. There's one in KZN. And also there are reports that in East London, something happened. They found 3 bodies. So it looks like we are seriously experiencing a problem of crime. And I don't think it will be wise for the president to travel when there are so many burning issues.
Well, it seems we've not been spared, because as we look at other incidences in other countries, I mean, Sri Lanka is now also coming to the fore once again, perhaps as the president is set to step down within the coming days. And we're looking at what that incoming leadership is going to look like, perhaps more unrest, a humanitarian crisis. What are we observing on that front?
The president has announced that he is going to step down on Wednesday. The prime minister is intending to do the same. We saw the unrest yesterday, protesters storming the building and the private residence of the president, and we saw them swimming, using his piano to entertain themselves. And this morning, we are told that they found stacks of money, but they handed over that money to the police. And therefore, the problem in Sri Lanka, it's not going to go away. I think the person who will be taking over, or the interim government, has a lot of work to do. The problem here, you have a country that has took a decision to take money from the IMF for the past 16 years. And now it is difficult to pay back the money, and the IMF is not willing to bail them out now. And therefore, that is a lesson to many countries, including our own country. Currently, South Africa is borrowing at an alarming rate. We saw the numbers from World Bank, the money that was branded around in terms of what we're getting from the World Bank. You have the IMF on our doorstep. We are also owing the BRICS Bank a lot of money. We are owing the African Development Bank in terms of infrastructure development. And I think if a country is in a crisis, going to international financial institutions and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, you will never get out of that rut. You know, when the ANC took power in 1994, this country was literally bankrupt. But the then leadership was wise to ensure that we get out of that mess. We're able to pay our loans, and they were able to kind of look at development in the country. But now it looks like we're going there pre-1994. And I think it is a lesson to African countries that borrowing is not a solution when we have challenges.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those sentiments. Perhaps as we look at the coming week ahead, what else can we expect? I mean, there's a Mandela Day program, but also the future of the UK, Boris Johnson having stepped down, and potential political instability in the UK?
yes, a turmoil in the UK politically. We saw Boris Johnson resigning, announcing his resignation and pointing out that he will leave office as soon as his party has appointed a new leader who will then become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. When you look at the processes, it is still a long way, and therefore the opposition, the Labour Party in particular, is not agreeing with the Conservative Party in terms of all those processes. They want Boris Johnson out of the office now. And therefore, we saw yesterday many members of the party coming forward to indicate that they will avail themselves for the position of the leader of the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom. And by extension, the person who will emerge victorious will then become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It is indeed a huge challenge for United Kingdom. But when you look at the markets, I think the markets are still holding, and they are optimistic that the resolution will be found. And I think investors and people had lost hope in Boris Johnson. He was just a mess. I mean, you look at the mistakes that he committed since he took office, quite shocking. And I think perhaps it's a relief for many, and maybe UK is hoping that the person who's coming will be a better leader.
Well, certainly scenarios unfolding. We've seen scenarios unfolding where we can all learn a few hard lessons. But let's leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, perhaps before we go, let's take a look at the Mandela program that's set to unfold. It is Mandela Month. After all, the 18th of July, we commemorate the life and times of Utata Nelson Mandela. What can we expect on that front before I let you go?
Tomorrow, the foundation will unveil the program, both national, continental, and international. We know that on the 18th of July at the United Nations, there's going to be an event, and our team there will bring us up to speed with what's happening there. But also looking ahead in October, the lecture that will be delivered by the current Prime Minister of Barbados. And I think the focus there is going to be on food security and climate change. Even now, the local activities in South Africa, on the continent and outside South Africa, will be on issues related to food security because of drought, natural disaster, but also because of the war in Ukraine, and also the issue of climate change. We know that COP27 in Egypt will look at where we are currently in terms of addressing challenges of climate change. And the Prime Minister of Barbados will be in Egypt later this year in October at the COP27. From there, he will come to South Africa, where he's going to deliver the Nelson Mandela Lecture in Durban, as it was announced by the foundation a week ago.
Absolutely. Definitely ideals of reconciliation and unity needed now more than ever, perhaps coming to the fore during the month of July. Let's leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us for that update. Again, SABC News International Editor Sophie Mukwena giving us the latest, perhaps what we can expect on the week ahead. Again, thank you very much to her for her time. Another news now, rolling blackouts are set to continue for the entire week ahead. Eskom says it will implement stage 4 load shedding from this afternoon, with varying stages to be implemented during the week. The power utility says this is due to the loss of 5 large generation units, as well as the delay in returning 5 units to service.
Load shedding will therefore regrettably be implemented at stage 3 between 7 and 4 p.m. Between 4 and midnight, load shedding will be implemented at stage 4. It will then be reduced to stage 2 until 5 a.m. on Monday. Should anything change between now and then, Eskom will promptly communicate those changes and implement them as necessary. 3 units at Kendal Power Station, 1 each at Tutuka and 1 at Majuba Power Station were forced offline to perform emergency repairs. The return to service of a unit each at Midupi, Anot, Camden, Krill and Duva Power Station has been delayed. Regrettably, stage 4 load shedding will have to be implemented between 5 in the morning and midnight on Monday. Eskom will communicate any other changes as may be necessary. Currently, there are 16,400 megawatts of capacity that is unavailable due to breakdowns, while another 4,600 megawatts of capacity is out on plant maintenance.
Right, another news, 9 initiates have died in the Eastern Cape since the start of the winter initiation season. It's a major decrease compared to the previous season, where nearly 50 initiates died, mostly due to dehydration. All the deaths occurred in the OR Tambo district, and Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Traditional Affairs recently conducted an oversight visit there.
Celebrating the transition from boyhood to manhood, at least 40,000 boys had undergone this rite of passage during this initiation season. This period is usually a concern for parents, as some initiates lose their lives at initiation schools.
Because we know some of the initiates during this June initiation period did not come back. So it is such a happy occasion for me today. I'm elated, I'm beyond happy, I am so happy. I thank God truly for this day.
Illegal initiation schools and unregistered traditional surgeons continue to be a challenge for this custom.
Yes. There are boys who have passed on. Yes, there are illegal schools. And yes, we have observed all of that. And we are saying those are the areas we are going to focus on. For now, we're still hoping that our law is going to make a difference.
They end up being victims of people that are moving, that are teaching them something that is totally not in line with initiation in terms of how they should conduct themselves inside the initiation schools. Like they teach them that you must not drink water and all that and that there's nothing closer to any truth.
The current initiation season is expected to close next week. Abongile Yankees, SABC News, East London.
Right, in other news, the Agape Rehabilitation Centre has embarked on a vigorous campaign to fight substance abuse, especially among the youth in the Northern Cape. The 13-year-old organisation held a substance abuse seminar in Kimberley. Let's take a look. We've seen the Northern Cape as amongst the most drug-infested provinces in the country, and this results in high incidents of domestic violence, including murder, rape and housebreaking. The Agape Rehabilitation Centre has admitted that substance abuse among the youth has reached its peak, where the organisation says funding will go a long way to assist the fight against the scourge of drug substance abuse. Well, that's where we're going to leave it for you today. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC. Again, we'll be back next week for a look at the week in review. But for myself, Liesl Wilson and the team, until then, do take care, stay safe, and we'll see you then. Goodbye for now.